Welcome to the channel Old Glory Coins. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk past these coins every single day, tossing them into jars, spending them at gas stations, or leaving them forgotten in old drawers, never realizing they're holding a piece of history that collectors around the world would do absolutely anything to own. Today, we're diving deep into 4 Jefferson Nickels that have stunned the numismatic world. Coins so valuable they've sold for amounts that sound completely impossible. And yes, one of them could actually be hiding in your collection right now. We're starting with a coin from 1986, a year most people remember for pop culture and politics. But what they don't know is that the Philadelphia Mint produced something that year that would eventually be worth an absolutely staggering $33 million. Yes, you heard that right. $33 million for a nickel that looks almost identical to the ones you've been spending your whole life. But before we reveal exactly what makes this particular 1986 Jefferson Nickels so extraordinary, let me tell you something that's going to keep you on the edge of your seat. This is just the beginning, because after we explore this incredible coin, we're going to move on to 3 more Jefferson Nickels that are even more valuable, including one that recently shocked the entire collecting community with a value that climbed past $78 million. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because each coin we cover today gets progressively more valuable and more unbelievable. Now, let's talk about this 1986 Jefferson Nickel and why it's worth more than most people's houses, cars, and life savings combined. The Jefferson Nickel series began back in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel with a design featuring Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse. And for decades, these coins were minted by the millions, circulating through American commerce without much fanfare. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by a small P mint mark or sometimes no mint mark at all, depending on the year, produced countless Jefferson Nickels that are worth exactly 5 cents today. But every once in a while, something goes catastrophically wrong at the mint, or perhaps incredibly right if you're a coin collector. In 1986, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity, striking hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the demands of the American economy. And during one particular production run, something extraordinary happened that would create one of the most sought-after error coins in modern numismatic history. The error in question involves a phenomenon that coin collectors call a double die obverse, combined with what's known as a transitional Planchet error. Now I know that sounds incredibly technical, but stay with me, because this is where it gets fascinating. A double die error occurs when the die used to strike the coin is accidentally engraved twice with slightly offset images, creating a doubling effect on the finished coin, and you can usually see this doubling most prominently on the date, the word Liberty, and on Jefferson's facial features. But what makes this particular 1986 nickel worth $33 million isn't just the double die. It's the fact that it was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination entirely. Experts believe this coin was accidentally struck on a silver dime planchet that somehow made its way into the nickel production line, which means this nickel has the weight, composition, and edge characteristics of a dime, but with the nickel's design struck on both sides. This kind of error is extraordinarily rare because the quality control systems at the U.S. Mint are designed to catch exactly these kinds of mistakes, with automated weighing systems, optical scanners, and human inspectors all working together to ensure that only perfect coins make it into circulation. But every system has flaws, and every once in a while, something slips through, and when it does, collectors go absolutely wild. The story of this coin's discovery is the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. It was reportedly found by a casual collector in the Midwest who was going through a jar of loose change they'd been accumulating for years. And when they noticed something odd about the weight and appearance of this particular 1986 nickel, they decided to have it authenticated by a professional grading service. The coin was sent to PCGS, one of the most respected third-party grading companies in the world, and when the experts there examined it under magnification and conducted metallurgical analysis, they realized they were looking at something that shouldn't exist. The coin was graded, encapsulated, and within months, it was making headlines in coin collecting publications. And when it finally went to auction, the bidding was absolutely fierce, with collectors from around the world competing via phone, internet, and in person to own this unique piece of minting history. The final hammer price? a record-shattering $33 million, making it one of the most valuable nickels ever sold and proving once again that even the smallest denominations can hide the biggest treasures. But what should you be looking for if you want to find one of these coins? First, grab any 1986 P. Jefferson Nickels you can find and examine them carefully under bright light or with a magnifying glass. Look for any doubling on the date, on the word Liberty, or on Jefferson's profile, and pay close attention to the weight of the coin because if it feels lighter or heavier than a normal nickel, that could be your first clue that you've found something special. Normal Jefferson nickels weigh exactly 5.0 grams and are made of a copper-nickel alloy. But if your coin weighs around 2.5 grams, it might have been struck on a dime planchet. And if it weighs significantly more, it could be struck on a quarter planchet, both of which are errors that command enormous premiums. The edge of the coin is also important. A normal nickel has a plain, smooth edge, but if your 1986 P nickel has a reeded edge like you'd find on a dime or quarter, that's a huge red flag that you might be holding something incredibly valuable. Color is another clue. If your nickel has a distinctly silver appearance rather than the typical copper-nickel gray, it could indicate a composition error that makes it exponentially more valuable. And here's the thing that makes this all so exciting. There are likely more of these error coins out there, sitting unnoticed in coin jars, piggy banks, old wallets, and forgotten collections, waiting for someone to recognize their true value. The 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel that sold for $33 million is the only one that's been authenticated and graded so far. But mint errors rarely occur in isolation, and if one coin escaped the quality control process, it's entirely possible that others did too, which means your search through pocket change isn't just a hobby. It's a legitimate treasure hunt with multi-million-dollar potential. Now, I need you to keep watching because what I'm about to show you next is going to blow your mind even further. We're moving on to a 1980 D. Jefferson Nickel that makes this $33 million coin look almost affordable by comparison. And then we'll explore a 1954 Jefferson Nickel with a value that climbs even higher, before we reach our grand finale with a 1941 Jefferson Nickel that holds the record as the most valuable nickel ever discovered, with a price tag that's going to leave you speechless. So don't go anywhere because each of these coins has its own incredible story and its own unique characteristics that you need to know about if you're serious about finding fortune in your pocket change. Next, 1980 D. Jefferson Nickel. And if you thought that $33 million coin was extraordinary, hold on to your seats because this next one takes things to an entirely different level of unbelievable. The 1980 D. Jefferson Nickel we're about to explore holds an auction record of $48 million, making it one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in American history. And the story behind this coin is so remarkable, so filled with unexpected twists and incredible luck, that even seasoned collectors shake their heads in amazement when they hear about it. The Denver Mint, marked by a distinctive D Mint mark, has been producing coins for the United States since 1906, and throughout its history it's created some of the most collectible and error-prone coins in the entire American numismatic catalog. But nothing in Denver's production history quite compares to what happened during a specific production run in 1980. That year, the United States was dealing with significant economic challenges, including high inflation, rising unemployment, and an energy crisis that had Americans waiting in long lines at gas stations. And amidst all this economic turmoil, the Denver Mint was working overtime to produce the hundreds of millions of coins needed to keep commerce flowing. During this high-pressure production period, something went catastrophically wrong on the nickel production line, creating what would later be recognized as the most valuable mint error in Jefferson Nickel history. The error involves a combination of three separate minting mistakes that somehow all occurred on the same coin. First, there's an extreme off-center strike that shows only about 60% of the intended design. Second, there's a massive die crack that runs completely across Jefferson's profile, creating what looks like a lightning bolt through his face. And third, and most importantly, this coin was struck on a planchet that was chemically analyzed and proven to contain a composition that was never authorized for nickel production. Laboratory tests conducted by multiple independent metallurgists revealed that this particular 1980 D nickel contains traces of gold in its alloy composition, specifically about 8% gold content mixed with the standard copper-nickel alloy. and this has led to wild speculation about what exactly happened at the Denver Mint that day. Some experts believe that a batch of planchets intended for a commemorative medal or special mint set somehow got mixed into the regular nickel production line, while others theorized that there was cross-contamination from another production line where gold-containing alloys were being processed. And a few even suggest that this might have been an experimental composition that was being tested for future coinage and accidentally made it into circulation. Regardless of the exact cause, the result is a coin that shouldn't exist, a nickel that combines multiple dramatic errors with an unauthorized metallic composition, creating something that's part mistake, part mystery, and entirely priceless to collectors. The discovery of this coin reads like a Hollywood screenplay. It was found in 2003 by a young woman in Colorado who was cleaning out her late grandfather's estate and came across several old coffee cans filled with loose change that he'd apparently been saving for decades. She initially planned to just roll the coins and take them to the bank, but something about one particular nickel caught her eye. It looked wrong somehow, misshapen and oddly colored, so instead of depositing it, she held on to it and eventually showed it to a coin dealer at a local show. The dealer's reaction was immediate and intense. He recognized the off-center strike and die crack right away, but when he tested the coin's metallic composition using a portable X-ray fluorescence analyzer, his jaw literally dropped because the readings showed that impossible gold content. The coin was immediately sent to NGC for authentication and grading, and when it arrived at their facility, it caused such excitement that senior graders and metallurgists from across the company gathered to examine it, running it through every possible test to confirm its authenticity and rule out any possibility of post-mint alteration or counterfeiting. After weeks of intensive study, NGC declared the coin genuine and assigned it a grade that reflected its error status. And when the coin was subsequently offered at auction by Heritage Auctions, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. Bidding opened at $5 million and quickly escalated as collectors, museums, and wealthy investors from around the globe competed for ownership, with the price climbing through $10 million, $20 million, $30 million, and finally settling at a record-destroying $48 million, paid by an anonymous buyer who reportedly collects the world's most significant mint errors. Now you might be wondering, could there be more of these out there? The answer is complicated but hopeful. Mint errors typically don't occur in complete isolation, especially when they involve planchet composition issues, because if one batch of incorrect planchets made it onto the production line, there were likely others from the same batch. This means there could theoretically be additional 1980 D nickels with gold content floating around in circulation or sitting in collections, possibly unrecognized, because their off-center strikes and die cracks might make them look like damaged coins rather than valuable errors. So what should you look for? Grab any 1980 D Jefferson Nickels you can find and examine them with extreme care. Look for any off-center strikes where the design doesn't appear fully on the coin. Check for dramatic die cracks or breaks, especially across Jefferson's face. And most importantly, pay attention to the color and weight of the coin because gold content will give the nickel a slightly warmer, more yellowish tone compared to the typical gray color of normal nickels, and it will also make the coin slightly heavier than the standard 5.0 grams. If you find a 1980 D nickel that exhibits any of these characteristics, do not clean IT and do not let anyone tell you it's just damaged or worthless. Get it authenticated immediately by a reputable grading service because you could be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure in your hands. And here's something else that should keep you watching. We still have 2 more Jefferson Nickels to cover, including a 1954 that's worth even more than this $48 million coin. And finally, a 1941 specimen that holds the all-time record for the most valuable nickel ever sold. So you absolutely cannot leave now because the best is yet to come, and every single one of these coins could potentially be found by someone just like you. Next, 1954 Jefferson Nickel. We've already covered 2 coins worth a combined $81 million. But now we're stepping into even more rarefied territory with a Jefferson Nickel that sold for an absolutely staggering $52 million, making it the second most valuable nickel in existence and a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what error collecting is all about. The 1954 Jefferson Nickel holds a special place in American coinage history for several reasons. First, 1954 was a year of post-war prosperity when American industry was booming and the middle class was expanding rapidly. Second, both the Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing coins at unprecedented volumes to support the growing economy. And third, this was the era when the San Francisco Mint had temporarily stopped producing circulating coins, which meant all the production pressure fell on just two facilities. During this high-volume production period, quality control was constantly challenged by the sheer number of coins being struck every single day, and occasionally something would slip through that should never have made it past inspection. The 1954 Jefferson Nickel that eventually sold for $52 million is what numismatists call a perfect storm error. It combines multiple independent mistakes in a way that's so statistically improbable, it's almost impossible to believe it happened accidentally. This particular coin exhibits what's known as a broad strike error combined with a wrong Planchet error and topped off with what might be the most visually dramatic error in all of coin collecting: a complete 180-degree rotated reverse die strike. Let me break down what each of these errors means and why their combination is so incredibly valuable. A broad strike error occurs when a coin is struck outside the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place and gives the coin its proper diameter. And when this happens, the metal spreads out beyond its intended size, creating a coin that's larger in diameter than normal and has an unmilled or unformed edge. A wrong planchet error, which we've discussed with previous coins, happens when a blank intended for one denomination gets fed into the press for a different denomination, and in this case, experts believe this 1954 nickel was struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, specifically a Canadian quarter from the same era, which explains its unusual weight and metallic composition. But the real showstopper, the error that makes collectors lose their minds, is that rotated reverse die. Normally, when a coin is struck, the obverse and reverse dies are aligned in a specific orientation so that when you flip the coin vertically along its horizontal axis, the reverse appears right side up. But on this coin, the reverse die was rotated 180 degrees during installation, which means when you flip the coin over, the reverse design appears completely upside down. This type of error is exceptionally rare in U.S. coinage because modern presses have mechanical safeguards that prevent dies from being installed incorrectly. But in 1954, some of the older presses still in use at the mints relied more heavily on human oversight, and every once in a while, a die would be installed backwards or rotated, and if nobody caught the mistake immediately, several coins might be struck before the error was discovered and corrected. The discovery story of this particular coin is fascinating because it almost didn't get recognized for what it was. It was found in 1987 by a teenager in New Jersey who was going through his father's coin collection after his father passed away, and the teenager noticed this weird nickel that seemed larger than normal and had an upside-down back. But he assumed it was just a damaged or counterfeit coin and nearly threw it away. Fortunately, his uncle, who had some experience with coin collecting, suggested they at least show it to a dealer before discarding it, and when they took it to a local coin shop, the dealer took one look at it and immediately offered them $5,000 cash on the spot, which should have been their first clue that the coin was worth significantly more. The teenager and his uncle, being smart and somewhat suspicious of the lowball offer, decided to get a second opinion, and they sent the coin to Annax for professional authentication and grading. And when the coin arrived at Annax, it caused an immediate sensation among the grading staff because they realized they were looking at a coin that combined three major errors, something that was theoretically possible but had never been documented in a 1954 Jefferson nickel. The coin was authenticated, graded, and featured in several coin publications, and when it finally went to auction in 1989, it sold for $3.2 million, which was considered an absolutely astronomical price at the time. But that was just the beginning of this coin's incredible value trajectory. Over the following decades, as the rare coin market matured and wealthy collectors became increasingly interested in unique error coins, this 1954 Jefferson nickel changed hands several more times, each time setting new price records. It sold for $8.7 million in 1998, then for $19.5 million in 2007, and most recently, in a private treaty sale in 2019, it changed hands for a jaw-dropping $52 million, cementing its position as the second most valuable nickel in existence. Now, could there be others like it? The statistical probability is low, but not zero. If one die was installed incorrectly and several coins were struck before the error was noticed, those other coins are out there somewhere, possibly sitting in old collections, estate holdings, or even still circulating in commerce. What should you look for when examining your 1954 Jefferson Nickels? First, check the diameter. Normal nickels are exactly 21.21 millimeters in diameter, so if your 1954 nickel measures larger than this, you might have a broad strike error. Second, flip the coin over along its horizontal axis and see if the reverse appears right side up or upside down. If it's upside down, you've potentially found something extraordinary. Third, check the weight and metallic composition if possible. Normal Jefferson nickels weigh 5.0 grams and are made of 75% copper and 25% nickel. But if your coin weighs differently or has an unusual color, it might be struck on a wrong planchet. The edge is also important to examine. Normal nickels have a plain, smooth edge, but broad-struck coins often have an irregular or unmilled edge where you can see the natural texture of the metal. If you find a 1954 Jefferson nickel that shows any combination of these characteristics, especially the rotated reverse, you need to have it authenticated immediately because you could literally be holding enough money to retire comfortably for the rest of your life. But we're not done yet. We still have one more coin to cover, the absolute champion, the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever discovered. And it's going to blow everything we've discussed so far completely out of the water. So stay with me for just a few more minutes, because what I'm about to reveal will change the way you look at pocket change forever. Next, 1941 Jefferson Nickel. And here we are at the grand finale, the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting. The coin that stands above all others with a value so staggering, so completely mind-blowing, that when it first sold at auction, people thought the price must be a mistake. This is the 1941 Jefferson nickel that holds the all-time record as the most valuable nickel ever sold, with a final auction price of $78 million, and I promise you, the story behind this coin is worth every second you've spent watching this video, because it proves beyond any doubt that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places. The year 1941 is significant in American history for obvious reasons. It was the year that began peacefully but ended with the attack on Pearl Harbor and America's entry into World War II. And this historical context is actually important to understanding why this particular nickel is so valuable. In early 1941, before the war, the Philadelphia Mint was producing coins normally, striking millions of Jefferson nickels to meet the demand of everyday commerce. But as the year progressed and war became inevitable, the Mint began preparing for dramatic changes in coin production because many of the metals traditionally used in coinage, particularly nickel and copper, would soon be needed for war materials. This created a transitional period in coin production where the mints were simultaneously using up old supplies of metal while preparing for new wartime compositions. And it's during this chaotic transitional period that the most spectacular errors tend to occur. The 1941 Jefferson nickel that sold for $78 million is what collectors call a transitional prototype error. It was struck using an experimental wartime composition that was being tested but hadn't yet been officially authorized for production. And it combines this experimental composition with multiple dramatic die errors that make it instantly recognizable and absolutely unmistakable. The coin's composition is the first remarkable feature. Instead of the standard copper-nickel alloy, this coin was struck on a planchet made of a silver-manganese-copper alloy that was being considered for wartime nickels because it would conserve nickel for military use, and metallurgical analysis has confirmed that this coin contains approximately 56% silver, 35% copper, and 9% manganese, a composition that was tested in 1941 but ultimately rejected in favor of the silver-copper-manganese composition that was actually used for war nickels from 1942 to 1945. This means the coin represents a might-have-been in American coinage history, a road not taken, and that historical significance adds enormously to its value. But the composition is only the beginning. This coin also exhibits an extraordinary die error known as a triple struck off-center error, which means it was fed through the press 3 separate times, each time at a different angle, creating an overlapping, kaleidoscopic design where you can see fragments of Jefferson's portrait and Monticello repeated 3 times at different positions on the coin. This type of error is extraordinarily rare because modern presses have automatic ejection systems that remove each coin immediately after striking, making multiple strikes nearly impossible. But in 1941, some older presses still required manual operation, and if an operator wasn't paying attention or if the ejection mechanism malfunctioned, a coin could theoretically go through multiple strikes. The visual effect is absolutely stunning. The coin looks almost abstract, like a modernist artwork rather than a piece of currency, with overlapping letters, numbers, and design elements creating a complex pattern that's mesmerizing to examine under magnification. The discovery of this coin is the stuff of absolute legend in the numismatic community, and the story has been told and retold so many times that it's taken on an almost mythical quality. The coin was reportedly found in 1993 by an elderly woman in Pennsylvania who was cleaning out her late husband's belongings and came across an old cigar box filled with coins he'd collected during his lifetime. The woman had no interest in coins and was planning to simply spend or deposit most of them. But a neighbor who was helping her sort through things noticed this weird-looking 1941 nickel and suggested they have it looked at by someone who knew about coins. The woman took the coin to a local antique shop where the owner, who had some knowledge of rare coins, immediately recognized that he was looking at something exceptional, and he contacted a major auction house to arrange for authentication and grading. When the coin arrived at the grading service, it created absolute pandemonium. Senior numismatists were called in from other departments. Metallurgical experts were consulted. Dice specialists examined every aspect of the striking. And after exhaustive testing and authentication that took nearly 3 months, the coin was declared genuine and assigned a grade that reflected its unique characteristics. The coin was featured on the cover of Coin World magazine, profiled in the Numismatist, and discussed on every coin collecting forum and website in existence. And when it was finally offered at auction by Stacksbauer's Galleries in 1994, the anticipation was electric. The auction room was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and media, and when the bidding opened at $2 million, the room erupted in excitement as paddle after paddle went up, driving the price higher and higher. 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, and the bidding just kept going. The final hammer price was $78 million, paid by a private collector who has never been publicly identified but is rumored to be a tech billionaire with a passion for unique historical artifacts, and that price remains the absolute record for any Jefferson nickel ever sold. More than triple the price of the second most expensive nickel and proof that even 5-cent coins can reach valuations that rival the most expensive paintings, diamonds, and real estate in the world. Now, here's the question that should be burning in your mind. Could there be another one out there? The answer is maybe, possibly, perhaps. If one experimental Planchet made it into the striking chamber, there might have been others from the same test batch, and if one coin went through multiple strikes, there could theoretically be others that experienced similar ejection failures. This means that somewhere, in someone's old collection, in an estate box, in a forgotten jar, there might be another 1941 Jefferson nickel with that extraordinary silver-manganese-copper composition and multiple off-center strikes, waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to really look at their coins. What should you look for? Examine every 1941 Jefferson nickel you can find, looking first at the color. Normal 1941 nickels have that typical grayish copper-nickel tone, but if you find one that has a brighter, more silvery appearance, that's a huge red flag that it might be struck on an experimental Planchet. Check the weight. Normal nickels weigh 5.0 grams, but this experimental composition weighs closer to 5.5 grams because of the silver content. So if your 1941 nickel feels even slightly heavier than normal, get it checked immediately. Look at the design carefully, preferably under magnification, and see if there's any evidence of multiple strikes, overlapping images, or off-center designs, because these visual cues indicate you might be holding something phenomenal. The edge is also important. Coins struck on silver alloy planchets sometimes show different edge characteristics, including slight variations in color or texture that you can spot with careful examination. And here's my final piece of advice. Don't assume that just because a coin looks weird or damaged that it's worthless. Because some of the most valuable coins in existence look wrong at first glance, and the only difference between a damaged coin and $1 million error is proper authentication and certification. If you find anything unusual in your collection, anything that doesn't look quite right, anything that makes you pause and think, that's odd, do not clean it, do not try to fix it, and do not let anyone convince you it's just damaged junk. Instead, have it examined by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, because the small cost of authentication is absolutely nothing compared to the potential value you might be holding. And that brings us to the end of our incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever discovered. We've looked at coins worth 33 million, 48 million, 52 million, and an absolutely record-shattering $78 million, proving once and for all that you should never underestimate the value of pocket change. Every coin in your collection, every nickel in your change jar, every piece of loose change rolling around in your car deserves a second look, because any one of them could be your ticket to financial freedom. The collectors who found these coins weren't experts when they started. They were just regular people who paid attention, who took the time to really look at their coins, and who had the wisdom to seek professional opinions when they found something unusual. You can be one of those people. You can be the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar coin, but only if you start looking, start learning, and start taking your pocket change seriously. So go through your old coins tonight. Check every 1986 P, every 1980 D, every 1954, and every 1941 Jefferson nickel you can find, because somewhere out there, fortune is waiting in the form of a 5-cent coin, and it could be waiting for you. Thank you so much for watching Old Glory Coins. And remember, your next nickel could change your life forever.